You can call me an Uwe Duva.
Hello, fellow netizens, and welcome to Scandalous Games, the show where we take a closer look at video game-related controversies. I'm Kevin Impellizeri, and I do the research, and I share a story of a video game-related controversy to my friends.
Hello, I am John Dukes. I'm a gamer extraordinaire.
Hey, I'm Elford Stephens. I'm a longtime fan of everything gaming.
Hi, my name is Phil Thomas. I'm relatively new to video games, so you might as well consider me a video game newbie.
I know I say this every episode, but this one I'm especially super excited to do. This one was really fun to research, and it's a wild story, because today we're examining the history of whom some have called the Raging Boll, the Deutschland Destroyer, the Teutonic Terror, and the worst director ever. I'm, of course, referring to the infamous director of bad video game movies, Uwe Boll. Has anyone heard of Uwe Boll?
He's definitely made some fun movies, so I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Have you seen any of his movies?
Oh, God, I have. I've watched, unfortunately, House of the Dead, and it was just insanely disorganized, and it was just crazy.
I've seen Alone in the Dark, the one with Christian Slater. I've seen one of the Blood Rain movies.
Oof.
I've also watched, he's got one about Dungeon Siege.
In the Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege tale.
In the Name of the King. Oh, yeah, I saw it post.
You might be the most experienced in the oeuvre of Uwe Boll cinema, Elford.
And I also want to give Alfred an achievement for this. These movies are hard to watch.
You can call me an Uwe Duva.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. You are Uwe Duva, all right.
And nothing on my end.
Before researching this episode, the only one I'd ever seen was House of the Dead, and it is a weird mess. That movie.
That's a good way to put it.
Over a 24-year career, he directed 34 movies. Among them were 10 movies based on video games, which have become not really famous, but probably more infamous, as is the person who has been behind the camera for all of these. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So buckle up. We have a wild ride ahead of us. Ever since he was a little boy, Uwe Boll wanted to make movies. He was born in Germany on June the 22nd, 1965, and spent a lot of his early years at Sunday matinees at the local cinema in Borscheid, watching basically anything they were screening. As an adult, Boll briefly attended film school. However, he didn't stay long, recalling in one interview, quote, "It was too much theory and rules, so I quit." Because the best way to learn how to do something is to not learn anything about it. He eventually did earn a PhD in literature, but he never gave up on his dream of becoming a filmmaker. In 1991, he founded his own production company, and through the 1990s, he tried to make a name for himself as a genre director, putting out several German-language films, such as German Fried Movie in 1992, which is a sketch comedy film in the vein of the American Kentucky Fried Movie, Barshell, A Murder in Geneva from 1993, which was a murder mystery, and The First Semester from 1997, which was an Animal House-style college romp. However, Boll wanted to make a mark on Hollywood, and in the early 2000s, he started releasing English-language films. These included Sanctimony in 2000, Black Woods in 2001, and Heart of America in 2002. These films garnered kind of a mixed reception from American critics. For example, in a review of Black Woods, Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times praised the film's intricate plot, intricate was his own words, but noted lackluster acting and poor cinematography. And early on, Boll quickly became disillusioned with the Hollywood mainstream, developing a great resentment for what he came to call Hollywood bullshit.
I'm starting to like him. I'm being honest with you. Sounds like a good dude.
For example, 2002's Heart of America was an examination of a school shooting inspired by the 1999 Columbine massacre. Despite the provocative topic, few took notice. Meanwhile, a year later, Gus Van Sant released a similarly themed Elephant, which attracted much more positive attention, much to Boll's chagrin. In 2008, Boll told a GQ reporter, quote, "I saw it, and I think Elephant was super boring, but Van Sant got all the A-list invitations. I got shit." For much of his career, Boll lamented he never received the attention he felt he deserved from Hollywood. In a 2010 documentary, he elaborated on his frustration with the Hollywood mainstream, saying, quote, "I recognized in 1999 that Hollywood will not give me money. You don't raise 260 million euro from sophisticated investors if you're a crazy artist fucker. I feel like it's here that I should point out that English is Boll's second language, leading to him making some interesting turns of phrase." We'll see a few as we go on.
Interesting. Let's go.
However, in 2001, Boll discovered an opportunity to crash Hollywood's party: video games. On June the 15th, 2001, Lara Croft Tomb Raider opened number 1 at the US box office. It was the most successful video game film adaptation of its time, grossing over $274 million worldwide on a $115 million budget, including $47 million its opening weekend, and it ended up as the 14th highest grossing movie of 2001. Critical reception notwithstanding, the film's financial success revitalized Hollywood's interest in video games. Sure, attempts in the 90s such as Super Mario Brothers, Double Dragon, and Street Fighter were famous flops. However, Tomb Raider's success got some production companies thinking the new millennium would be different.
I would assume that people watch it because Angelina Jolie's in it, right?
That's my assumption. But yeah, it was not received well by critics and is considered notoriously terrible. But it made money, which got Hollywood thinking, you know what? It's going to work this time. Video games are going to make us money. So you know what we need to do? We need to make a whole bunch of video game movies. And as a result, film studios began snatching up the movie rights for video game brands left and right. During the early 2000s, a plethora of video game properties hit the big screen, including Resident Evil, which opened number 2 at the US box office in July of 2002, a Tomb Raider sequel, Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life in 2003, Doom in 2005, Silent Hill in 2006, Hitman in 2007, and Max Payne in 2008. Other game properties considered for movies at the time that weren't made included American McGee's Alice, with some rumors suggesting that Wes Craven was going to direct it, Duke Nukem, State of Emergency, Crazy Taxi. Guess who they had to direct? Supposedly. Richard Donner. Supposedly Richard Donner was going to make a Crazy Taxi movie. And probably the most famous video game movie to not get made, Halo. However, no one was more prolific at snatching up video game movie rights than Dr. Uwe Boll. Between 2002 and 2005, Boll secured the rights to at least 8 games: House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, Dungeon Siege, Blood Rain, Far Cry, Fear Effect, Hunter the Reckoning, and Postal. Now, the first of the licenses he acquired was for Sega's zombie shooter series, House of the Dead. Or I should more appropriately say, The House of the Dead. And he was able to get several of the other licenses before this film even premiered, meaning several game companies were willing to hand over the film rights to their properties to Boll, a relative unknown in the English language cinema scene, virtually sight unseen. So in addition to his ability to catch them all, film rights speaking, Boll benefited from generous tax incentives enacted by the German government. At the time, filmmaking investments by German citizens were tax deductible if the movie didn't make a profit. Investors could also borrow money to invest in films as a tax write-off. This was likely to foster greater interest in the arts, but it also created an opportunity for wealthy Germans to funnel their money out and get huge write-offs from the government. If the movie made money for them, all the better, though they would have to pay taxes on the profits. But a film didn't need to be successful to be financially attractive. So we've got basically a tax shelter for movies.
That's interesting.
Let me be clear. Uwe Boll was by no means a skilled filmmaker. We've talked about it early on so far, and we're going to continue to talk about that throughout this episode.
Yeah.
However, Uwe Boll was very good at fundraising. By all accounts, he was also an efficient director who developed a reputation for putting out films on time and under budget. So he's not a James Cameron type by any stretch. Quality, however, is another story. But given the massive tax breaks, making good movies was beside the point for him or his investors. Boll once joked to a Vanity Fair reporter that his backers were, quote, mostly dentists who don't watch the films. I get visions of Uwe Boll sweet-talking German dentists in the way that Max Bialystock from The Producers does with little old ladies.
Oh my God.
He's going up, he's getting his root canals. Like, hey, would you like to put money into my movie? It's like, was that be any good? I don't know, but they get a lot of tax breaks from the government.
Oh my gosh, this guy.
In addition to the tax incentives, Dr. Boll also cut lots of corners. He filmed the majority of his projects in the cost-effective and tax-friendly city of Vancouver, British Columbia. He also developed an effective strategy for securing named talent, specifically waiting until the absolute last minute, reaching out to a notable actor, and promising a short shoot and an easy paycheck. As he explained to a reporter in 2006, quote, we can go up to an actor and we can just say, look, in 4 weeks we start shooting. Here's X amount of dollars we can offer you. This amount is maybe under his normal rate, but he knows he's not going to get another offer in the next 4 weeks, so he takes that offer. In this fashion, Uwe Boll was able to work with such recognizable names as Jason Statham, Burt Reynolds, Michael Madsen, Ray Liotta, Ron Perlman, and Ben Kingsley. Although I will point out that none of those guys are well known for turning down roles in bad movies.
As long as the money flowed.
Wait, so did these movies make money? Like, is that why he kept getting financing?
If you're thinking about these movies as a tax shelter, whether or not they make money or not kind of doesn't matter. Because if they lose money, then you get all that written off and you don't have to pay any taxes. And if it does make profits, you get some of those returns, although you have to pay taxes on them.
Wait, so whose is that the tax break for? Is it Uwe Boll or is it for the investors?
It's Boll and his investors. So Boll runs a production company called Boll KG. And so he puts up some of the money, but he also raises it. He kind of crowdsources these things through German investors.
It doesn't sound like he's making profit on any of his movies.
According to Boll, he apparently makes most of his money on DVD sales.
Oh.
I'm not clear if he's deliberately trying to make flops. And as we go into more about Boll as a person, he really does think he's an auteur indie filmmaker. Everything you hear from him, he thinks he's making good movies. And he has this fascinating paradox where it's like he's clearly doing all of these things to try to maximize profits and take advantage of cost cutting. But at the same point, he really thinks he's a good filmmaker. He really thinks he's making art.
Yeah, I think I saw a quote in Wikipedia making a comment to Eli Roth and other famous directors saying that they're fucking jokes, basically.
Yeah, he challenged Michael Bay to a boxing match.
That's hilarious.
I'm looking up, just while we're talking about this film, what were the returns on some of these movies? I'm going to address House of the Dead in a minute. It made some money, but some of his later movies tanked. His next one, Alone in the Dark, had a $20 million budget and only made $12 million.
Ooh.
So nowhere close. And the biggest of these, In the Name of the King, was like his Lord of the Rings. This is his biggest budget movie now. This had about a $60 million budget. Do you want to guess how much this movie made?
$12 million.
13 million.
Wait, John, what did you say again?
13 million?
Exactly.
Wow.
Nice.
$60 million budget
Yes.
made $13 million. Absolutely tanked.
So it sounds like the same 1 million people are paying $12 to $13 a ticket to see an Uwe Boll movie. So he's budget constrained. He just doesn't realize it.
Boll also saved money by cutting back on some non-essential parts of filmmaking. For example, as one, writing. He had a habit of rushing into production using first drafts of a script or even just a script treatment, making it up as he went along. For example, Blood Rain screenwriter Guinevere Turner, best known as the screenwriter for American Psycho, by the way, recalled after she submitted her first draft of Blood Rain to Boll, rather than discussing revisions, Boll just started filming.
I got a budget to satisfy here. Let's keep rolling. Go. Put that down. That's too much money.
Yeah, time is euros. Let's get this going. According to Guinevere Turner, she later recalled that only about 20% of her script made it into the final movie, with the rest attributed to Boll or his actors. In 2017, Vanity Fair reporter Darren Kings recalled observing Boll in one of his film shoots. King described a chaotic scene of actors improvising lines on the fly, with Boll occasionally just telling them what to say. And again, I feel like the need to point out that Boll is not a native English speaker. According to King's quote, on Boll's set, a harried script supervisor searched the 20-page treatment, which was more like a hodgepodge of miscellaneous dialogue ideas in no discernible order, with no page or scene numbers or character designations. It was largely ignored in any case. And if you're looking for a standard of comparison, the average Hollywood film script is usually between 95 and 125 pages. Let's not let writing get in the way of making this movie.
It's fascinating. He has a PhD in literature. I mean, doesn't he have like standards or knowledge or anything? He's just like going off what he think he knows.
It's too much theory, dude. You just got to get into filmmaking. You gotta.
Yeah.
It's like jazz. It's the filmmaking you're not seeing. You know, it's the
just follow this awkward tempo.
If you've got natural talent, you don't need no schooling. You just figure it out as you go. That's why so many YouTubers are able to make successful movies.
Yeah.
Boll's first video game adaptation, The House of the Dead, premiered on October the 10th, 2003 on about 1,500 screens in North America. It was based on the Sega light gun shooter, and the film is a pretty bog standard zombie movie with college students going to a rave on an island that ends up overrun by the undead. In a curious bit of cinematography, the movie occasionally cuts away to footage from the House of the Dead arcade game. Would anybody like to share their experiences watching this movie?
Oh, God. It made no sense.
I haven't seen it, but now I kind of want to see it.
Oh, my God.
You know, with good writing, any of these games could become good movies. Pretty simple formula there with House of the Dead.
I haven't seen this movie in a very long time. So
Yeah,
this is
same.
coming from my recollections and from stuff I've read about it. It's these college students go to this rave party, which apparently is being hosted by Sega. There's a whole bunch of Sega merch everywhere in this place. And apparently, like, there's this evil scientist who's got like a lab not too far from this luxurious Canadian island they're on. And all of a sudden, zombies come out. I remember being really frenzied and not really knowing what was going on. And they're trying to make bad jokes. Like, there's this German ship captain.
Oh, yeah, that's
named
right.
Captain Kirk, and they don't cease to mention the fact that, oh, it's like Star Trek.
I mean, this director is just amazing how he captured the video game and the movie all at the same time.
The critical reception when this movie came out was not good. Not good. With the consensus being that it was so dumb that it would only appeal to gamers. You got to think about the level of esteem video gaming and gamers had in the early 2000s. And a lot of that spills into these reviews of House of the Dead. So, for example, Dennis Harvey of Variety wrote, quote, House of the Dead really makes no attempt at character or story development. There's establishment of premise, introduction of cannon fodder leads, then action, action, action. Making House as close to video gaming as cinema has gotten. Whether this is a good or a bad thing depends on just how much 14-year-old boy you've gotten ya. Or Christy Lemire of the Associated Press, who wrote, imagine how boring it is to watch someone else play a video game. Now imagine doing that for an hour and a half, and that's what you have here. Or Sean Means of the Salt Lake Tribune, who wrote, from its rapid-fire editing to its oppressive techno soundtrack, it's a movie designed to irritate all who come near. The movie currently has a 3% critical score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Nice.
But you know what? Boll's not making it for the critics, man. He is making it for the fans. And surely they had a better opinion of Boll's take on House of the Dead than the critics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This man
Can't wait to see.
he's a genius. He's a mastermind. He is a saint of video game movies. Jesus Christ. I'm so convinced.
Ooh, he's a visionary. Yeah, they hated this too. The film currently has a 10% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and fan reviews from the time are a masterclass in early 2000s internet shade. Here's some excerpts from some IMDb user reviews from the time it came out. Quote, House of the Dead is as bad as a film can get. The acting was cheesier than the stale nachos and cheese I was eating. The constant cutscenes to the video game became an annoyance, and the action is so ridiculous that I couldn't help but join in the laughters with the rest of the audience. I would not wish this abomination on anyone. Save your $6 and rent the video game instead. At least then you can control your own misery.
Yes. Fuck yeah. That's a good one.
Or this one. This movie was ludicrous in every way imaginable, which brings me to ask, was this movie meant to be a joke? I can't believe it made it to theaters. That part's all in all caps. Whoever was responsible for releasing this movie should be imprisoned. Seriously. In summary, smelly pile of steaming vomit, a must-see for those of you who still poured salt on slugs just to watch them die. All others stay away, far away.
Oh my God. Wow.
And my personal favorite, I saved the best for last. If a comet were to come and smash its way into our planet, wiping the human race out, I would not only welcome it as opposed to watching this movie, I would fear for the future when people sifting through the rubble would see this movie and connect it as being thought of by a person of my species. Thus introduce film and game enthusiasts alike to the oeuvre of Uwe Boll, and thus introduced Uwe to some of his greatest antagonists, namely critics and moviegoers. More on that in a minute. However, despite the negative reception, the film was a moderate financial success, earning about $13 million on a roughly $12 million budget, possibly encouraging more German dentists to invest in Boll's video game projects. He's back in his dental board. You hear? Movie went pretty well. I'll give you more money. So, well, how did it review? Don't mind that.
No. He showed the awards he got from this movie, you know.
He printed up like participation trophy and showed it.
Yeah, exactly.
What happened is that they asked him, how was it? And he said, watching it was like pulling teeth, which is true. They just thought he was making a joke about being in the dentist chair. And that's why this just continued over and over and over again.
Just keep giving him money.
Yeah. Yeah. A play-by-play question. At this point, how many movies has Uwe Boll made?
Like as of today?
No. At this point in the story. Is this his first movie?
This is his first video game movie. He had made, I want to say this is about his 7th or 8th movie. He made about 4 movies in Germany, and then he started doing the English. So at this point, his English language body of work were 3 movies: Sanctimony, Blackwoods, and Heart of America. So this, if we're considering his English language movies, this was his 4th.
Okay. So there's probably 20 movies yet to come in his catalog, and the year is
2003.
Okay.
Over the next 5 years, between 2003 and 2008, Boll released 8 movies, 5 of which were based on video games. However, the increased output did not translate to higher quality, and poorly received video game movie after poorly received video game movie only increased horror and video game movie fans' ire for Boll, and they continued to savage him online. Critics, meanwhile, continued to have a field day tearing his movies to shreds. Those 5 video game movies, Alone in the Dark, Blood Rain, In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale, Postal, and Far Cry, as of this recording, have an average critical score of 4.5% and an audience score of 19.4% on Rotten Tomatoes. And observers began to compare Boll to legendary schlock director Ed Wood and started labeling him the worst director ever. In 2009, Boll finally received recognition from Hollywood, but not in the way he had hoped. That year, Boll won 2 Golden Raspberry Awards, earning Razzies for Worst Director and Worst Career Achievement.
Oh my God.
That's harsh.
Oh. What was his comment on that, Kev? Do you have anything on that?
I'm glad you asked. Hold on.
Oh, I love to hear it.
I didn't put this in the script, but I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
He wrote an acceptance speech.
Oh, fuck.
Give me a second. I'll bring it up and I will read this to you.
Oh, fantastic.
Here we go. When he was nominated, this is prior to him winning, he released an acceptance speech. He thanked the organizers for putting him alongside such prestigious actors as Ben Kingsley and Pierce Brosnan, who were also nominated that year, saying, quote, that I'm this time also nominated as Best Supporting Actor against stars like, he was also nominated for that too, against stars like Ben Kingsley and Pierce Brosnan, shows that my genius comes more and more into its peak stadium. I don't know what he's talking about. All my 3 movies are nominated in different categories. He was nominated for 3 movies that year, by the way, for Worst Director. All my 3 movies are nominated in different categories. In the Name of the King, what an epic masterpiece with tons of stars like Jason Statham. Tunnel Rats, against Tunnel Rats, Clint Eastwood's bullshit Letters of Imboyo, or whatever the fuck was the title of that movie, is an amateur clip of brainwashed patriots. I don't know what he's talking about.
I love this guy. This guy's amazing. He's so
There's
good.
more.
Okay, lay it on me.
And of course, Postal, where Dave Foley Dick is in a very nice shot. I created an inspiration of Jean-Luc Godard's work in the 60s. You remember the black and white stuff with Jean-Paul Belmondo and Vern Troyer gets raped by 1,000 monkeys. This was inspired by the later work of Gus Van Sant, especially the work he's doing in his trailers. I never won a Razzie, but this year I'm sure that there is no way around Uwe Boll, so that finally I get the award I deserve. I read that verbatim. Wow. All of that was in it.
That was so good. Is there any audio on him saying anything like that?
Not on that one. So
he sounds epic.
Letters in Boyo or whatever the.
It's like, dude, you know where you're at right now, right?
So yeah, the Vern Troyer thing he's referencing is that in Postal, Vern Troyer gets raped to death by monkeys. That's a thing that happens in that movie.
Yikes. Jesus Christ.
So yeah, that acceptance, it's so good. Horrified and outraged video game and movie fans began to call for him to quit the business. Anti-Boll websites sprung up across the internet, with such titles as Uwe Boll is Antichrist.com and UweBoll.com. The latter site only contained one sentence, quote, please stop making movies.
So harsh.
In March of 2008, a game developer named Bert Harvey created an online petition asking Boll to stop making video game movies. When asked how many signatures it would take to quit the business, Boll told a FearNet reporter it would take 1 million. The desire to see Boll stop making video game movies even received corporate sponsorship.
Wow.
On May the 7th, 2008, the makers of Stride Gum took Boll up on his challenge, offering a digital coupon for a free pack of gum to every signer of the Stop Uwe Boll petition if it earned 1 million signatures by May the 14th. However, no free gum was issued because it failed to get its 1 million signatures, garnering a measly 357,000 signatures. Some also, this is one of my favorite parts of the story, some even took to messing with Boll directly. In 2007, Uwe Boll was approached by a pair of Frenchmen who claimed they had been hired by Konami to make a script for a Metal Gear Solid movie, and they convinced Boll to sign on to direct. However, there was a problem. They were not with Konami. The whole thing had been a prank. Boll later recalled he liked the script, although given his track record, that could have easily been just crayon scribbles on a napkin or just the words Metal Gear Solid script typed in large print on a single sheet of paper.
That's brutal.
You probably could have given him the back of the box description for Metal Gear Solid and he would have ran with it. Think about what he did for Blood Rain. It's like...
God.
Oh, John, it's weird because he said the script for the Metal Gear Solid movie was good, but I heard the whole thing stank.
You might be curious what the makers of Metal Gear Solid thought about being tied into Uwe Boll. When asked, series creator Hideo Kojima once responded in 2007 when asked if Uwe Boll was making a Metal Gear Solid movie. He said, quote, "Absolutely not. I don't know why Uwe Boll is even talking about this kind of thing. It's impossible that we'd ever do a movie with him." On a semi-related note, Boll claimed for a while he had approached Blizzard hoping to make a Warcraft movie, to which a company representative reportedly told him, quote, "We will not sell the movie rights, not to you, especially not to you."
Poor
Petitions and fake movie pitches aside, most of the complaints about Uwe Boll centered around people complaining about him online on message boards and videos and things like that. So let's talk about what were their issues and why they devoted so much attention to him. I mentioned this way back when we talked about Jack Thompson. The backlash over Boll's movies, it happens during that same kind of formative period in internet gamer culture where message boards are developing and people are starting to connect online and memes are developing and people are realizing, you know what, I'm not alone and I'm not this weird loner nerd in my basement playing video games. There are other people who like this, and coalescing into what became gamer culture for good or ill. And so they're seeing what Boll is making. And a key characteristic of this emerging identity that I see during this time was a deep sense of personal investment in the success of gaming as a medium. We want to see gaming succeed. We want gaming to be taken seriously because we see how important, how valuable this medium is. And we don't want anything to happen to it. So fans get really protective of both video games and individual game properties, the ones they really like. Someone producing bad video game movie after bad video game movie could potentially ruin their experience for a beloved series, or it can make it harder to take video game movies seriously or make good movies down the line for video games. Like, how can you take games seriously when Alone in the Dark or fucking Blood Rain is the best they can do, you know? And especially because this is a time when comic book movies and like high fantasy were getting their due in the theaters. You started getting good comic book movies. You got in the early 2000s, you got the first 2 X-Men movies, the first 2 Spider-Man movies. 2008, you had Iron Man and the start of the MCU. And high fantasy, like the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Harry Potter series are getting big. So it's like people are looking at, why can't it be gaming's time too? To have this exciting part of the larger cultural zeitgeist. And a guy like Uwe Boll is just fucking that up for everybody. So for example, here's a commenter from a 2006 Eurogamer article about him. This is a rather long quote, so I hope you'll forgive me, but I think it captures a lot of the sentiment. It said, quote, "If Uwe Boll ever happens to come across this message, I'd like to politely explain something to him. The public doesn't hate you because you're so honest and open. They hate you because you've taken, or will take, some incredible source material and churned out a ridiculously bad movie. We as gamers should not just be happy that there's a movie getting made of a game. If something is terrible, we should not be ecstatic simply because it exists. There's a huge potential in any number of video games for movie adaptations, and the fact that companies and directors such as yourself seem to be willing to butcher beloved characters and events with such reckless abandon speaks volumes about the contempt the corporate world currently has toward video game material. There are classic classics in the video game world, like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy, Metroid, or Castlevania, for example, just as there are classics in the literary world or in any other art form. I weep for the day when you're granted license to tarnish the name of a universally cherished brand and ruin yet another potentially excellent movie. You show the licenses you've acquired as much disdain as the very people you have so much disgust for. Please stick with ideas like Heart of America, an admittedly decent movie, and leave games alone.
I agree with that.
Another commentator from the same article said a similar sentiment, saying, quote, "It isn't just enough to make video game movies. You have to do them right. He butchered Blood Rain. That is totally my game, and he ruined it." So again, this kind of protective thing that it's my game, and you making the shitty version of something that I love, it very well could tarnish this thing for me, or make it so that no one else is going to make a good version of this. And Daniel Morris of PC Gamer made a similar observation about the backlash to Boll's films. Observing gamers see the shoddiness of his work as negatively reflecting gamer culture, telling a New York Times reporter in 2008, quote, "One thing to understand is that gamers face a certain geek stigma, and it's certainly not help when movies come out based on games and the movies are just no good." For some, Boll represented a symptom of a larger problem. Hollywood churning out terrible movies with no respect for the source material as a shameless cash grab. For example, one IMDb user reviewer for House of the Dead wrote in 2003, quote, "This film exemplifies everything wrong in Hollywood. Nothing more needs to be said on the subject. The fact that the controlling interest actually saw this being made and said, 'I think we've got a winner here,' shows me not only everything wrong in Hollywood, but also everything wrong in the existence of humanity." With another person saying, quote, "Uwe Boll fits in perfectly with all the other Hollywood garbage." For Boll, who viewed himself as an outsider to the Hollywood money machine, who disdained Hollywood bullshit, as he called it, these comments must have especially stung.
So, Kev, sorry, just to keep track of where we are. So are we at 2008 at this point in the chronology, or are we further than that?
I'm kind of jumping a bit in time. I'm not going to devote a lot of attention to each specific movie just because in the interest of time. However, we're right now about 2006.
So at this point, how profitable are his movies? Has he lost money, or has he made money? My point being, listen, if people are complaining about his movies, but they're making money, then hey, they're making money. But if they're not, people have a point.
In terms of video game movies, I'll focus on that specifically. At this point, he has made Alone in the Dark and Blood Rain. And I think In the Name of the King was being made at this point too, although I might be wrong on that. Like I said, Alone in the Dark did not make money. It had a $20 million budget. It made $12 million.
Oh.
And Blood Rain had a $25 million budget, and it made $3.6 million.
Jesus Christ.
So it's not just the movies are considered bad, but in terms of quality, they're just tanking financially.
But I'll go back to what you said there, Kev, with your point of view, which I totally agree, that for folks who cherish these games, like me, like everybody else who talks in the series, it kind of like a punch in the stomach how games are interpreted. And folks who are non-gamers just see it as an entertainment, but I see it as more of just, it's hard for people like them to understand what our perspective of games is. It's more than just like entertainment. It's just like having the perseverance to beat a game is more triumphant than watching a movie. Directors like him should be not so gung-ho with making bad movies, but really take a strong look at what they're creating.
I mean, so John, let me say I wasn't trying to say that it's okay for him to not take people's feelings into account as far as gaming. But I guess logically, I'm like, okay, I can understand why these movies keep getting made if he's making money. But there's so much bad press about him. They're tanking, I mean, he's $40 million in the hole at this point on video game movies. I just don't understand how he could be in a position to keep making these things at that point.
I don't know how tax law works, which doesn't help for this. I guess he can just like write it off and dust himself off and move on to the next one.
I feel like there's some pieces to when it comes to the economics that we are unaware of, because he not only made these 3 movies, but he continues to make movies. He makes sequels of the movies that are doing poorly. So somewhere in there is an economic incentive. It's costing way too much money to make these movies. There's an economic incentive somewhere in his model that we're unaware of.
Yeah. So where does he get the financing?
German dentists.
So at this point, he's received somewhere between $50 and $100 million in financing and has only made $25 million. So when they're not getting their investment money back, let alone any kind of profit, why are they saying something to him?
This screams tax shelter to me. Like, it's people who've got money that they need to move, that they don't want the government to touch, so they put it into this.
Just the fact that he keeps making it says that somewhere along the line, there's a profit incentive. Don't know how big it is.
I agree with you, Elford. There's a line of money that we're not seeing here that I'm just not smart enough in my research to find. But I think you're right. It's like people don't do this kind of stuff unless they're making money off it.
You can't get somebody to give you $20 million and fail, and then another $20 million and fail again, and $20 million and fail again 20 times in a row. Like, it's probably multifactorial, but it's working. Whatever he's doing is working.
You know, my problem with his movies are obviously shit shows, and he had no thought to say I should stop. He kept on going, all because of the money. And as a result of that, properties such as that lose the value of another opportunity to get a better director who knows what they're doing and knows what the culture behind that is. I just see it as more of just stopping the fun for gamers like us when there's a lot of shitty movies out there like that.
A lot of things that come up is that it's not just that it's a bad movie, it's also not a so bad it's good movie either. And I agree with that. Having seen a bunch of his movies now, I would agree with that. They're not movies you put on in the background at a party because they're kind of contradictions. It's like at certain points, a lot is happening and you have no idea what's going on. And at other points, for long stretches, nothing is happening. And it's just dull dialogue delivered by actors who couldn't give a shit. And it's like, they're not fun background movies either. Like I couldn't see getting drunk and riffing on a movie like I would say, like any one of a number of fun B movies. Like it's not I didn't have fun watching his movies.
Yeah, same.
With all this, you might be wondering how Boll responded to the backlash to his body of work. I'm going to give you an A, B, or C. Did he A, just ignore it? Haters are going to hate. B, step back from filmmaking and focus more on the logistical and fundraising aspects of the business, the places where he really has a lot of skill. Or C, go on the offensive and start lashing out at internet critics.
B.
I think it's C.
It's obviously C. Of course it's C. Of course he's going on the attack. Boll did not take kindly to the negative reception to his movies, because despite everything I've said so far about the degree to which Boll cuts corners in filmmaking, he really does view himself as an artist. And he gets very defensive when people criticize his work. So, for example, he accused internet critics, and he tends to lump people who complain about him online and critics who give him movies bad reviews as one and the same. So they're like internet haters. He accused them of trying to intimidate him and drum him out of the film business because they're jealous of his success. So, for example, he said at one point, quote, "You have tons of people that want to be directors. They want to make movies, they want to produce, but they're only basically sad fanboys turning into reviewers because they will never make a real thing. The only thing that's left for people like this is to go out on the internet and try to destroy people." In response to the petition, for example, he called the signers internet nerds and jealous wannabe filmmakers. Or, as he told Ellie Gibson of Eurogamer in a 2006 interview, quote, "If people are writing on the internet about how my movies were big failures, it's because these people are amateurs and they have no idea of the reality of filmmaking and film selling. I get bashed as the worldwide enemy #1 in filmmaking by people who are working at Starbucks and who also want to make movies. It's ridiculous. It's completely idiotic because they're hitting on a guy who actually made it happen, but I started my career in the same position as anyone else," end quote. Haters gonna hate, and fuck the haters.
Oh my God, I want to hear all his stuff now. He sounds amazing.
He's definitely fun to listen to.
He is. I love his defenses. They're ridiculous.
Something else you should know about Uwe Boll as a person: he never takes responsibility when his movies fail. Mm-hmm. It's not that he struggles to frame scenes or create good pacing or deliver a comprehensible plot or have finished scripts. It's not that he can't get good performances out of his actors, whom he's admitted he only reaches out to on the promise of a quick and easy paycheck. It's always something else. If the plots are bad, it's because the video games he adapts have bad plots. So, for example, in a 2006 interview, he said, "Let's be realistic. What is House of the Dead? House of the Dead is a brainless shooter where you shoot zombies into pieces. So what are you expecting from the movie? Schindler's List?"
Oh my God. Oh my God, he said that. Jesus Christ.
I actually think it would be a little bit easier.
I think it's a poor craftsman who blames his tools. That's me. People have made good movies out of shitty ideas. I mean, for the longest time, people thought that comic books could never be done because they were goofy and dumb. And then we got Spider-Man 2, which is an amazing movie.
Dude, Spider-Man 2 is a really amazing movie.
I see his point, even though I don't agree with him trying to deflect from making bad movies. But he is making a point. If people are offended that he ruined the Halo franchise for him by making a bad Halo movie, not that got made. It's Halo is a first-person shooter where you're just running around shooting things in space. So it's like the idea that I ruined somebody's childhood by making a bad movie of something that originally, and like you said it yourself, Kev, making a good movie out of a poor concept or like a poor narrative for a game. So like I get him there.
I see both angles from what you're saying. On the one hand, he hasn't done a movie of a game that really mattered to me. And I feel like I wonder how I would feel if he did one of my favorite childhood games and did this type of job on it. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, this is just one artist's attempt at its rendition. Maybe I'm not being completely self-aware because I did have certain feelings about the HBO's ending of Game of Thrones, but that's for whole
my god, that's a whole other story.
That's another show.
Don't bring that
out. But
you gotta cut that.
I'm learning as I'm talking, and I did feel a strong resentment there, and I did change my watching practices after that. So I'll take that all back. I didn't care about any of these games, and so it didn't matter to me. If I cared, maybe it would have mattered.
If it's not the game's fault, maybe it's Hollywood's fault with them not caring about independent filmmakers in favor of their Hollywood bullshit like Star Wars or Avengers or any other popcorn movies that don't have the guts to tackle the real issues. So, for example, this is a movie that's not a video game movie that he was making. He wanted to do something on what was going on in Darfur. And so in 2009, he released a movie called Attack on Darfur. And he blamed Hollywood celebrities for the movie failing to get attention. He blamed George Clooney, Matt Damon, Angelina Jolie, and Mia Farrow, among others, for not promoting the film even after he sent each of them copies. If the box office figures are bad, he blames the distribution companies or the theater companies. So, for example, on Blood Rain's poor showing, he told a Eurogamer reporter, quote, "We were scheduled to go out on 2,000 screens, and then we came out on 930 screens, and only shitty screens, so it didn't work out." James Schramm, who headed the distribution company that Boll had just dumped on, countered that he had told Boll it was a bad idea to insist on a January the 6th, 2006 release date, quote, stressing that January 6th would be a tough date to open given post-holiday competition, and that Boll refused to listen to him. Both parties ended up suing each other, as well as actor Billy Zane, who also has taken this production company.
Billy Zane!
So I find it funny that Billy Zane got sued by Uwe Boll.
Billy Zane. He's a character.
But Billy Zane was in Blood Rain.
Oh, he was? Oh,
there's that movie,
Billy Zane.
That movie is a movie with a lot of bad wigs, and his is the worst.
Oh, poor Billy Zane. What happened to Billy Zane?
They probably never promised him 2,000 screens. He probably said, oh, it's going to go on 2,000 screens. And then they tried to pound the pavement. And because his movies are starting to tank and theaters aren't going to make money off these things, because regardless of however he's making them, they're making them on box office returns and they're not seeing any money. So they're becoming less inclined to put these movies out. If critics pan his movies, it's because they didn't actually watch them or they don't know good filmmaking. For example, after Wired published a negative review of Postal, Boll sent the following email to review writer Chris Kohler. I'm quoting this verbatim.
Awesome.
Quote, Chris, your review shows me that you don't understand anything about movies and that you're an untalented wannabe filmmaker with no balls and no understanding what Postal is. You don't see courage because you are nothing. And no, go to your mom and fuck her because she cooks for you now since 30 years. So she deserves it.
That's hard.
There's more. People like you are the reason that independent movies have no chance anymore. Signed to Uwe Boll. P.S. Postal is R-rated. The MPAA understood the satire. You not, you dumb fuck.
Oh!
Wow, he had some thought behind that one. Dang.
He packed a whole lot in there.
If moviegoers don't like the movies, it's their fault. It's either hardcore gamers are expecting too much out of his movies, or fans only want to see more Hollywood bullshit and not something from a real artiste. In a 2007 interview, he explained, quote, in the beginning, I was mad at how many reviews were written by critics who had never even seen the films. I will never please the gamers who write most of that shit. They have their own versions, their own movies in their heads. They'll always hate what you do. And there is no group that Uwe Boll hates more than internet trolls who write mean things about him on IMDb user reviews and message boards from the safety of their anonymous screen names. According to Boll, they have no right to complain because they're all losers who are jealous of his success and want to push him out of the industry. As he said in his documentary Raging Boll, quote, I felt like as an independent, why is it that geeks are not supporting me? I'm an outsider like them. I'm the reason they have no excuse not to try it on their own. He also accused trolls of deliberately review bombing his movies.
Yeah, with good reason.
But here's a funny aside. For a really brief time, Uwe Boll tried to reshape his image in the way like Tommy Wiseau did. Like eventually Tommy Wiseau, he eventually came around. He's like, yeah, this movie was supposed to be funny. And, he goes to the cons and he goes to the film screens and he kind of rolls with that. For a brief time, Boll tried to do that too. So for example, in 2008, Boll released a new cut of House of the Dead dubbed House of the Dead Funny Version.
Oh, no.
The new cut included pop-up bubbles, commenting on continuity errors, plot holes, and other funny observations by Uwe Boll. He also added a new opening sequence in wherein he is kidnapped by Al-Qaeda and forced to watch his own movies as torture. In Postal, he went a little further, playing an exaggerated version of himself who runs a German-themed amusement park. At one point, he boasts that he finances movies using Nazi gold. And near the end of the movie, he is shot to death with his last words being, "I hate video games." Boll also around this time, in addition to trying to, laugh at himself, tried another really inventive strategy: beat up nerds.
Oh my God.
Be up, nerds. Tell us about it.
On June the 12th, 2006, Boll issued an open challenge to his critics to face him in the ring.
You talking about boxing?
Boxing, yes. Uwe Boll offered to pay for up to 5 critics to come to Vancouver where he was wrapping up filming on Postal. There, they would face him in a 10-round boxing match.
Did they film this?
They did, actually.
Now this I would pay to watch.
According to Boll, quote, "I'm fed up with people slamming my films on the internet without seeing them. Many journalists make value judgments on my films based on the opinions of 1 or 2,000 internet voices. Half of those opinions come from people who have never watched my films. Participants had to be, quote, healthy males weighing between 64 and 86 kilograms, which for those of you who are not in the metric system is between 140 and 190 pounds. For boxing enthusiasts, that's a pretty wide weight range that covers about 6 different weight classes. It definitely doesn't cover me, that's for sure." I should have pointed out at the beginning that there's a good chance that when this comes out, Uwe Boll may try to beat us up.
No, we'll be ready for him.
That would be awesome.
Participants had to be a critic who posted something mean about him in 2005. If you're curious where we are on the timeline, that would be specifically Alone in the Dark. And maybe if you saw an early screening at a film festival of Blood Rain, but this is primarily Alone in the Dark reviews. And my favorite part of this, he specifically called out a whole bunch of usernames on IMDb as people he wanted to box, with some of them having the following usernames: Adult Swim Lover 2, Great Nates, The Doomsday Begins, Gunnery Sergeant Numbnuts, Chinese Old Market Man, Tyler Durden 52, and Big Sexy 77. As an additive incentive, Boll said he would film the boxing matches, included as DVD extras in the DVD release of Postal, and if critics would like, they could also be extras in Postal. In addition to Boll's urge to pummel nerds, there may have been a financial incentive behind this stunt, because in 2006, the German government finally ended that lucrative tax incentive program that had been fueling Boll's projects. And so at least one article, I believe it was Variety, suggested that with the tax breaks ending, he was beginning to think about new fundraising avenues. And one thing that might have helped was this big publicity stunt where he may have gotten some pay-per-view sales to help for fundraising. So it may not just have been about beating up guys, but it also might have been this. But it was probably mostly about beating up guys, to be honest. After receiving few takers, Boll lowered the bout length to 3 rounds. And in August of 2006, Boll announced his 5 opponents who would face him in a pay-per-view event sponsored by Golden Palace, dubbed Raging Boll. Facing Boll in the ring were the following critics: Carlos Palencia Jimenez Arguello, better known online as Oso 55, who was the webmaster of a Spanish film site, Cinecutter.com. Next was Richard Lotax Kianka, the CEO of Something Awful. Jeff Snyder, aka Mira Jeff of Ain't It Cool News. Fun fact about Jeff Snyder being in this fight: according to a Wired article on the bout, despite Ain't It Cool News having a history of savage reviews against Boll, Snyder never wrote any of them. My personal guess is he might have been one of the few people at Ain't It Cool News that fit the weight requirement. And Chris Alexander of the Toronto-based horror magazine Rue Morgue. And finally, Nelson Chance Minter. Minter was, by his own admission, not an established film critic and had never written reviews about Uwe Boll. Another fun fact about Chance Minter when he signed up: he was only 16 years old. All right, so we've got our lineup. First is Oso 55, who faced Uwe Boll in early September 2006 at a horror film convention in Spain. Oso trained for 3 weeks, but he was significantly less experienced than Boll, who beat him by TKO in the 3rd round. But the main event takes place on September the 23rd, 2006, at the Plaza of Nations Amphitheater in Vancouver, British Columbia, to a packed house of Postal cast and crew. Uwe Boll met his 4 opponents in the ring. Longtime Boll actor Michael Paré was at center ring introducing Boll as the Raging Boll, the Deutschland Destroyer, and the Teutonic Terror. Boll's opponents thought the whole thing was a joke, nothing more than a publicity stunt, and they treated it as such. So, for example, Chris Alexander came into the fight wearing a pair of bat wings and a luchador mask.
Nice.
It's kind of like he thought it was a joke. However, there was one person who didn't think it was a joke.
Uwe Boll.
Dr. Uwe Boll, who had been Uwe Boll was an amateur boxer who had been training for 4 months for this.
Oh my God, he was trying to take them apart. Is that what happened?
So yeah, he made short work of all of them.
Oh my God.
With the exception of Jeff Snyder, all of his challengers hit the mat in the first round.
First round.
He destroyed them.
Just out of curiosity, how far did Snyder go? How many rounds?
3.
Nice.
He went 3 before they called it TKO. After dispatching Chance Minter, who was his final opponent, while Chance's mom watched in horror from his corner. Again, Chance Minter at the time of the fight was 17.
Oh my God.
Boll grabbed a microphone and shouted, "The lesson was that so bad prepared the critics were in the ring, that is also the way they write their fucking critiques." I bet
God.
Boll, who was in his 40s, felt like a big man beating up a 17-year-old.
This guy's nuts.
Pummeling some nerds may have made Boll feel better, but it didn't result in better press or more revenue or fundraising. Because the one thing about this stunt basically wrecked whatever reputation Boll had left. After this was the thing everybody mentioned. You wouldn't see an article after this fight that didn't mention the fact that he boxed a bunch of critics in the ring. Even more so than he was already with internet people, he became a laughingstock. That being said, he still did continue to make both original films and video game movies, including 2 direct-to-video sequels each for In the Name of the King and Blood Rain. However, this should come as no surprise at this point. With the end of his tax incentives and with stunts like this, Boll found it increasingly difficult to raise the money to keep his dream alive, which in turn increased his frustration over Hollywood and the haters. In 2013, he launched a failed Kickstarter for a Postal sequel. Between 2014 and 2015, he launched 3 failed crowdsourcing campaigns to finance part of his film Rampage 3. He had a trilogy he made of these movies basically about this mass shooter guy. So he's trying to film the last movie in the series, Rampage 3, and he's going to crowdsourcing to finish the financing. In the waning days of his 3rd Kickstarter for Rampage 3, he published a brief 1-minute, 28-second video on the Kickstarter page with a simple title, "Fuck You All." He opened thusly, quote, "Basically my message is, fuck yourself," adding he was done with crowdfunding and hinted at quitting filmmaking, saying, quote, "I want to do Rampage 3 because it's an important movie, but it looks like you're easier giving $600,000 to if you make a movie about some," he likes using the R word, I'm not going to use it, "about some R word visit in the forest or another whatever Marvel Avengers bullshit dirt. So goodbye and goodbye Hollywood."
Hooray.
I again don't know what he's talking about that movie. In a follow-up video, this is still on his Kickstarter page, he spouted off against the Hollywood mainstream, calling it, quote, "brainwashing fucking bullshit and the most bullshit business with bullshit idiots, one after the other lining up behind each other. You know they're all fucking each other in the asses and no one makes any decisions." Shockingly, the campaign did not get its goal.
Oh no.
On January the 11th, 2016, Boll announced that with production wrapping on Rampage 3, which he did finally get enough funding to finish, he was getting out of filmmaking. He confirmed his plans to retire from filmmaking in late October 2016, citing the changing film market and the decline of DVD sales. Like many retirees, he's been busy. He focused on running a fairly successful German-themed restaurant he opened in Vancouver in 2015. He's also tried to start several Twitter feuds, including accusing director Paul Thomas Anderson of stealing the poster design for Blood Rain to promote his new film Phantom Thread. He also challenged Alex Jones to a boxing match in 2018.
Oh my God. Of course.
However, he was banned from Twitter in 2018. He claims on his website that he was banned for, quote, "no reason." However, he revealed elsewhere that he was kicked off the site for publicly calling someone a gay slur. In 2018, Boll also threatened to sue the makers of the movie Rampage starring The Rock.
Oh, really? That doesn't surprise me.
For allegedly stealing the name from his Rampage movie trilogy.
I was wondering if those movies are related.
Game, man.
I'm guessing no.
You should know that shit.
Ironically, and I don't think Boll knew this, Rampage, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, a video game movie.
Exactly.
So was Uwe Boll's Rampage movie not a video game movie?
Not a video game.
No.
Nope.
No,
I
this was
just assumed it was, but the pictures, the movies that I saw were only loosely related to the games. I just assumed he kind of left out the Rampage video game aspects, but
again, Boll thought he was an indie filmmaker and he wanted to do movies on the real issues. And so, like, he did a movie on Darfur, he did a movie on Auschwitz, he did a movie on Vietnam called Tunnel Rats, and he did this trilogy of movies called Rampage, the first of which follows a guy who becomes a mass shooter.
Nice.
And then the movies increasingly escalate. So, like, the second one is called Rampage Assault on Wall Street. So he's trying to say something about the financial crisis with this mass shooter guy.
Yikes.
And then the final one, Rampage 3's subtitle was Rampage 3 President Down. So I'd never watched it. I have no interest in seeing it. But again, he was trying to see himself as a real. He's talking about the real stuff that Hollywood won't talk about. Boll, in his retirement, also took on a surprising hobby: amateur internet film critic.
Oh boy. Here we go.
He set up a Letterboxd account, and during his time before he was kicked off the platform, published reviews for over 200 movies.
God.
Most of his reviews are either 1/2 star or 5-star reviews, and all of them are trolling. Most of the highly negative reviews are for Hollywood blockbusters, especially superhero movies, while he made sure to give his own movies 5 stars. Would you like to hear some examples of Uwe Boll's film reviews?
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
And are they all in bold, like in capital?
I'll give you 4. First is for Thor Ragnarok, 1/2 star. Sor Ruggerneck, or whatever the fuck it called, is a suck shit flick you can pass on and massage your temples instead.
Not bad.
The Dark Knight Rises, 1/2 star. Quote, "You're a fucking moron if you like this."
I don't disagree with him.
I like
The
that
Dark Knight
too.
Rises suck.
Avengers Infinity War, 1/2
Oh, boy.
star. For dumb, fat, hairy R words, ejaculating all over the theater and at each other's assholes for Thanos and Rubberman and whoever the fuck.
Jesus Christ. Wow.
And I saved my favorite for last. Ghostbusters 3,
Uh-oh.
which for some reason had a Letterboxd entry despite not existing. He gave it 1 star. Quote, "I just went forward in time and watched it. Save your money."
That's an
And-
awesome review.
And of course, like many angry white dudes on the internet, Uwe Boll has a podcast where he claims he is a champion of the downtrodden who speaks truth to power, boasting on his website, quote, "Uwe gave a voice to the people that those in power hope to silence and ignore. Uwe took on the failures and hypocrisy rooted deeply within the broken structure of our society while giving a strong voice to the ignored and unheard." As an interesting aside, he has a section for all of his mentions in the news media under the heading, "Fuck yourself."
Oh my God.
So when did he do these things for the downtrodden?
He's
I
trying
missed
to
that part.
He's trying to make the real movies that people are just being mean to him online. I'll end our examination before we go into kind of final thoughts on Boll with 2 quotations about him that I think sum him up a lot. Each of them are from an actor who worked with him on Postal. The first is from Dave Foley. You all know Dave Foley?
From News Radio?
Yeah, he was in News Radio. He was also in The Kids in the Hall. Dave Foley compared Uwe Boll to Andy Kaufman, viewing his relationship with internet critics as a form of performance art and the place that Boll's true talents resided, telling John Schwartz of the New York Times in 2008, quote, "Boll is like a quintessential German intellectual artist who has almost taken film arbitrarily as the medium he's going to work in. The art form is almost in being hated." And the second quotation comes from actor Zach Ward. If you know Zach Ward, you might know him as the bully Scott Fargus from A Christmas Story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Zach Ward worked on a bunch of Uwe Boll movies, and he was the lead in Postal, and told GQ writer Brett Martin in 2008 as well. He said, quote, "A big part of Uwe is a little boy that wants to be carried out of the theater on the audience's shoulders. But he's like, if you're not going to love me, I'm going to make you fucking hate me."
Now, that makes sense. That is kind of like a little boy.
Yep.
That's where we'll wrap up. Final thoughts about Uwe Boll and this journey we've taken.
You know, so we really dove deep into Uwe Boll here. I watched his movies. I was a bit more sympathetic to him and his art. Recently, I saw Alone in the Dark, and it was not that great. As I watched In the Name of the King, and I like fantasy movies, and so I found it okay, slightly funny, especially the enemies, like the way they filmed those guys. We didn't really talk about, but that it's really funny to watch. And so I was thinking, okay, at least somebody's making these movies. But now that I've learned a lot more about him, I'm a little bit more like, man, couldn't you have done a better job with what you were given? Like, you could have actually helped bring the genre up in a way that, in a different direction that Hollywood has taken it, and it might have been a nice contrast for us here. Maybe I could actually be an appreciation of something here.
No way, Alfred. This guy's a genius. He is perfect. All his movies are just gold.
You didn't like his movies. You didn't see his movies. You saw the wrong movie. Maybe that's the problem. We've been watching the wrong movies.
I have a contrarian view on this guy. And I think what Dave Foley said about his movies as performance art makes a lot of sense. If I just think about his motivation. So keep in mind the other context of what types of movies are being made now. It's the same movie over and over and over again. They'll remake Spider-Man over and over and over again. They'll make Batman over and over and over again. They'll repackage the same movie as different movies, like the Marvel movies over and over and over again. And, you know, there are criticisms that you can be made narratively about the Marvel films, and that they're no stakes movies. There are like no emotional stakes whatsoever. So why does he hate the Marvel movies? Because I think he understands what they are. People invest in them knowing they have to get a certain amount of money back. I will put $100 million into this Marvel movie, but you have to guarantee me that I will make 4 times my money back. And how do you do that? By adhering to a set of parameters and attributes that will guarantee a movie will make a certain amount of money, even if that movie is not necessarily like the best artistic value. And he understands how that works, because that's exactly how he got started. So I looked up Uwe Boll's net worth. What do you guys think it is?
-2.
No, I think he's got some money. Maybe
he's got
50
money.
million.
I know he's got money. I know in that Fuck You All video, he claimed that he said, I have enough money to play golf till I'm dead. So I can imagine, I'm going to say he's probably worth about $10 million.
He's worth $10 million. So first of all, he's worth $10 million. Second of all, the tax incentive, like the way that was structured, is that in Germany, if you spent a certain amount of money on a movie, you got half of that money back. So it makes perfect sense to me that you're basically investing in these movies to take half of your tax bill off. So what's the performance art, if there is some? Here's the performance art. I can make bad movies for 20 years and none of you can stop me, because this is how the industry works. It doesn't exist to make good movies. It exists for tax purposes. It exists for finance purposes. And I'm going to prove this to you and demonstrate this to you over and over and over and over again. And if you say my movies are bad, it doesn't matter, because you can't stop me from making them. And if you think about it, he challenged them to a boxing match knowing that he could go 10 rounds, right? This is a guy who, like, he's pushing at people, but he knows what his leverage is. So in that way, even though he's clearly an asshole and somewhat crazy, and I think he's making those postal movies because he's living out a fantasy where he wants to go postal on people, which is why Uwe Boll, I can't go 10 rounds. I can't even go 3. I know we're the same height. I can't fight you in the ring. Let me just put that out there right now. I am impressed with what he's been able to accomplish. He made movies for tax purposes, and he's made $10 million over his life doing something that many people can say is not good. Isn't that impressive? I think that's impressive.
That is impressive. And I actually really appreciate you doing that analysis and putting those things together for us, man. That makes a lot of sense. And as you were talking, I was thinking, well, part of the movie expense is paying people, and he may actually get a salary from those expenses. So he may be telling them, you know, I'm just going to take $100,000 out of this huge chunk of money. But if he gets to lock that away each time, he can make a little bit and store it up. And he gets to do something he loves with his life. Yeah, that makes sense. And if that's true, then kudos to him, because the criticism of modern film is a big one. I would have loved it if he had taken it and he had maybe taken his first couple films and then honed his craft so he could have produced some great films for us. That would have been amazing.
But like, to that point, I think he gets what the hustle is. He's not here to make great movies. He's here to make the types of movies that investors will invest in over and over again. And he hates Marvel movies because he's jealous of them, because they're doing a better job of the thing that he set out to do.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Respect the hustle, I suppose.
It's all in the game.
I'm glad he stopped making movies and just being a critic. That's all I got to say.
That's fair.
Well, he kicked him off a letterbox. He can't even do that. He complains on his podcast now.
Phil, so if I'm feeling what you're saying is maybe, hypothetically, he never liked video games in the first place.
That's exactly right. It's a shrewd move.
Hypothetically, this was his Marvel. This can attract some investors to hopefully put money into it.
And who does the public at that point not care about the opinion of, because they're somewhat looked upon as like a counterculture movement? The opinions of people who play video games, because video games are looked at as a voyeuristic, trite enterprise for people with no social skills. So clearly, if he was just going to tee off on a genre, like this is a vulnerable genre, I mean, that dynamic has changed clearly now.
I think on top of that, I didn't have a source for this, so I didn't put this in the script, but the fact that he's targeting video games in the first place, and two, the fact that he's targeting video games that are not terribly big franchises at the time, tells me that he probably could have gotten the movie rights for pretty cheap. I feel like he could have gone up to Eidos, and he could have gone up to Running with Scissors and a bunch of other ones like that, and just said, okay, here's $100,000 or whatever, I'll make a movie out of this, and you'll see a return on that. And like, okay, that's super cool. And he's coming in right at the time when people are starting to think that video game movies could be profitable. And there were articles at the time that asked whether or not he played video games, and he claimed he was a gamer. Guess which game he said was his favorite. There's one game he always mentioned when he said whether or not he played video games.
Super Mario Brothers.
Far Cry.
Postal.
Of course.
So, following this theory, in that time frame that he's been making his movies, this is just a personal perspective, but Hollywood has gotten better at making superhero movies. Hollywood went through phases where it was, this is okay, and then some movies that are just not good to keep coming out. And Hollywood has progressed in a way that I wish he did. Like, in a way that I wish an quote unquote indie developer had progressed, in that Hollywood has put out in the recent years movies that this is okay. You've come up with a formula that actually works, follows what you need, and is giving the public something decent to represent what these were. And so in that story that I created, Uwe Boll looks more like a failure because he lost in these 15, 20 years in the game that he was playing. He didn't do what Hollywood was able to do.
So Elford, I get under that theory that he would be a failure, but in the theory that he's doing performance art, like Dave Foley is suggesting, the whole point is that the movies are bad. The whole point is that they're bad over and over again, and they keep getting made because he's trying to give up the game. But who knows what the truth is? I don't know.
No, I see that. I think with that, he's a success. With the model of this is how people invest in movies, and you can make a life doing this, which was probably a much more fun and fantastic life than average Joe American going to his job every day. Like, he's a success. But in the eyes of the artist that makes films, right? The artist that's an indie artist making films who has to stand up against all of the negative things he says about Hollywood. That's where I think maybe he didn't succeed. And if he didn't want to succeed, then he succeeded. But Hollywood has gotten better.
I think that the only thing he achieved was be a troll in the Hollywood industry. That's it. That's all he really wanted, I think.
I would agree with that. And I think to tie me and Alfred's points together, I think what he's bitter over is that he made bad movies in the wrong way. If he had made bad movies in the way Hollywood wanted him to make them, he would be lucrative right now. I think that's the bitterness.
Any final thoughts on Uwe Boll?
My final thought is thank you and goodbye.
I say, hopefully he lived a good life. He made all this creative works. Good to him. Check out his movies. It'll be fun to see the movies. You may enjoy them. You may not, but they're there.
They exist. They do exist.
Or they make good drinking games.
I'll do 3 rounds, but we have to have protective headgear and gloves. I get to call the venue. I get to practice. No, I'm just kidding. Don't fight me, Uwe Boll.
Don't beat any of us up, Uwe Boll.
Yeah.
My last thoughts on this. That point that people kept making about him, his title of worst director ever. Is he the worst director ever? I don't think so. Not while Dinesh D'Souza is still making movies. Not while Shane Dawson makes movies. Not while Logan Paul makes movies. He, like Jack Thompson, is one of those people who's, you can't really talk about him without talking about gamers and how they interact with each other and how so much of the internet troll culture feeds off of guys like Uwe Boll, and that Uwe Boll himself, being a troll, also kind of fuels off that too. And I would imagine people's outrage sustains him. He's a land of contrasts, as it were. And that'll do it for today's episode of Scandalous Games. If you like what you're doing, you want to help the show, subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a rating on iTunes. And if you want to learn more, check out our website, scandalousgamespodcast.wordpress.com, where I publish the show notes and the sources for every episode. Our theme music is Occam Sequi by Seek Knowledge via the Free Music Archive, used under a Creative Commons BY-NC-SA 3.0 US license. And if you have a question, comment, or an idea for a future episode, email us at scandalousgamespodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Kevin Impellizeri.
I'm John Dukes.
I'm Elford.
Phil Thomas.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next Scandal.
Take care.